Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Depths. In our first episode, we explored what it means to live on autopilot and how our minds run on hidden scripts. Today, we're going to go deeper, diving further into the depths to understand how this autopilot works, how society shapes it, and how we can ultimately break free. The first thing to understand is that our brain saves energy. Autopilot is real. Let's think of our minds, therefore, as a computer. They come with an operating system already built in. This system tries to save as much energy as possible, so we always end up picking what's easiest and most familiar to us. However, this is not the whole story. There is another layer, which is called our social environment. Our country's history, our family, our culture, these shape what we see and believe. This social landscape is not fixed forever. It's more like a screensaver than the hardware itself. It can be changed, but most of us never realize that it really can be. One big problem in our modern Western quote unquote world is that we love black and white thinking. I think that it's close to an addiction. We love the good versus bad, rich versus poor, hero versus villain. If you ponder upon most movies, you realize that normally they portray the villain, for example, as pure evil. The hero is normally portrayed as purely perfect. The ending is always normally neat and happy and somehow finds a way to resolve itself. When a show comes out and it dares to show complexity and nuance and realism in their character, most of the time this show ends up getting praised. It ends up, getting a lot of prizes. Why? Because it feels fresh. People are tired of the same old drivel. Now, seeing life in black and white, as comforting as it can be, because that's the real reason why we have this tendency, it can be extremely dangerous. It minimum makes us judge other people and assume people's intentions way too fast. It makes us think problems only have two answers: win or lose, right or wrong, in or out. This is very important, and you'll find out why it's very important in a second. We end up seeing the world through a single lens or through a single screensaver. And we forget that this screensaver is just one of many possible ways of seeing life. Now, as I mentioned previously, I want to demonstrate using a real life example how extreme this can be. This example is very tragic and it really is extreme. A few years ago, there was a 14-year-old girl who was tragically unalived in broad daylight in public, allegedly by her friend's ex. I don't even think it's alleged at this point, but by her friend's ex anyway. This ex was 17 years old at the time. And from what we know, they had broken up some time before. They, during their relationship, had exchanged some gifts, and the girl asked to meet this guy so he could or she could get her gifts back. They agreed to meet, but when they did, he refused to hand over her belongings. A few days before that, this guy was just walking around, whatever, living his life, and he got hit by water, meaning somebody threw water on him from a bus or something like that. This obviously left him feeling some type of way. He probably felt embarrassed. He probably felt angry, as evidenced by his statement. He sent a message to one of his friends on Snapchat saying, "I can't let this slide." Side note, sometimes people think that their messages can't be recovered from Snapchat. This is a pro tip: your messages can be read and recovered from Snapchat. This is the point now. When he went to go meet the girl, he showed up with two things. He showed up with a gift, flowers or chocolates or something of the ilk, and he also showed up with a weapon. Showed up with a gift and he showed up with a weapon. At some point, a second girl, her friend, the friend of the girl who was going out with this guy, allegedly tried to grab the items. Remember, they were having some kind of disagreement about these items. She tried to grab the items from his hand and get her friend's things back. He went and he chased her. He chased her, and whatever happened. It ended up with this young lady losing her life. Regardless of these details, all these details being what they are, the point is This guy really showed up. He really left his house. And I want this point to really sink in. This guy really left his house with a weapon and chocolates. He left his house with a weapon and a gift. He thought that was logical. He thought that was normal to some level. This is synonymous with saying either you are with me or else. He showed up to that meeting with only two outcomes in his mind. This, my dear friends, is the very definition of binary thinking, albeit pushed to its absolute limits. Interesting, when this guy was caught, he reportedly showed no remorse because in his mind, he believed he was justified. This is normal behavior. There was only ever two outcomes, and it just happened to be one of the only two outcomes happened to come to fruition. Let me make it clear as well, because I know there's some ignoramuses sometimes online. Me adding details or fleshing out the story is not me trying to excuse the behavior. I know there's people who think like this. It is just we want to show something deeper, which is the following point. Sometimes what is commonly known as street rules, the way, people are not really from that background, they sideline it, they kind of push it to the fringes of society. This attitude, anyway, that ride or die attitude, that gangster attitude, in my opinion, is just an extreme version of the same binary thinking that is prolific throughout the Western world. This is what the Western world feeds us. It's the same autopilot in essence. It's just a more raw and more aggressive version of the same thing. It is in essence the same screensaver. It's just that this screensaver is extremely pixelated. This screensaver had some pixels missing. Following from that, now let's think about conflict for a second. Inside conflicts, what we are told is we have two reactions. Commonly, what we are told commonly is that we have two reactions in a conflict. We have fight or flight. Everyone knows what fight or flight is. Fight, obviously you fight. Flight, obviously you cut, you vamoose, you use your 10 toes, your God-given 10 toes. In actuality, there is 4 possible reactions. All of them are classed as involuntary reactions. Added to fight or flight, we have freeze. I'm sure some people are aware of just freezing in that situation. This is when you shut down, you just go still, and it's almost with the hope that the threat passes. Fourthly, we have fawn, FAWN. This is when a individual tries to please, to calm things down, to avoid a conflict. These reactions, all of them are based on survival instincts. They switch on faster than the processing of the thought itself. Something that is quite powerful if we ponder upon it is that these 4 tools, if we understand them, can all be used on purpose. Meaning, yes, they are involuntary. Yes, they are involuntary, but we can use them purposefully. If we need to utilize the fight situation, we can re-explain it to be establishing boundaries, especially when it really matters. Flight obviously can mean walking away from a toxic situation. And I would even add, sometime in these toxic situations, it's not a matter of walking away, it's a matter of using your 10 toes, utilizing your 10 toes to keep it moving. Then we also have freeze. Freeze can be useful if we need to pause, observe, and plan before we act, which we're going to utilize in a second anyway. Then we have fawn, which is often, looked down upon or not really considered, but it can be an extremely useful strategy, especially if you need to protect the peace, i.e., you need to protect the overall peace in a situation. Perhaps it's a family situation, perhaps it's even politics if you're of that ilk, you're of the world of politics. Anyway, you might need to utilize fawn to protect the peace for ourselves and others. As you can see, none of these involuntary reactions in of themselves are bad. They are only tools. The problem is when we inadvertently, unconsciously use these tools and we're only using it out of habit. That's when it gets a little bit annoying. Our goal, obviously, therefore, is to first see what pattern, identify what pattern is being used, pause for a second, and choose which one fits the moment. We need to start training ourselves to find the space between what happens and what we do next. A neurologist by the name of Viktor Frankl said it the best. He says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. Someone insults us now, conflict situation. So you just got insulted. Someone violated you, cussed you, whatever. Now, obviously, the blood is boiling, your heart is beating, and the expected reaction, according to certain people's paradigms, is to snap back, give it straight back. Could be verbal, could be physical, whatever. Give it straight back. Now, the issue is, where was the space? There was no space between the conflict, the input and an output. It was just input, output, automatic. And I would even say sometimes in our society we're even praised for not having any space. It's straight input, straight output, and you're more rated if you come with that kind of approach. However, this is wrong. In reality, the truth of the matter is that you have been hijacked. You have been hijacked. Your mind has been hijacked, and we need to find that space. And having that space and finding that space is in fact a skill, just like anything else. And any skill, just like anything else, some people have it naturally, but generally speaking, it takes practice, like training a muscle. And then once you do it, that's when you really gain power. Once you're able to choose your reaction, that's power now. If you really boil it all down, power is simply choice. You have the choice to be in a particular situation. You have choice. It's not that someone forces you, which is lack of choice, to be in that situation. You can be forced by your own self to be in a particular situation. So we need to take that power back. We need to think about a moment in which we lost control. Everybody's had them. Think about a moment where you've lost control. Rewind it in our minds. We have to make it like a movie, film it. Make it like a movie, rewind it in our minds, and then freeze the scene. Which scene am I talking about? Pinpoint the exact moment you bugged out. You have to freeze the scene where you bugged out. Freeze it, mentally do a 360 around yourself and the surrounding and the environment, what was happening. You really capture that image. Then at that very point, this is the very point before the bug out. Let's ask ourselves, what would we have done if we had paused for 5 seconds? What would we have done? Yes, that's the real work right there. That's the real work. And that is, my friends, freedom. So, all in all, most of life's worst mistakes, you can say, are not really due to what has occurred, but rather due to our reactions to what has occurred. So we need to train our pause. Not that type of pause, but we need to train our pause. Let's see the screensaver for what it is, and let's actually choose and not simply react. If this video helped, don't forget to like and subscribe and share this video with someone who you think is stuck on autopilot. And if you would like to go deeper into the depths, you can always book a private session with us on Calendly. See you next time here in the depths. We're waiting.